Hi there! Today we will be painting a metal jug with some cherries and the reflection of the cherries in that metal jug. If you look at the sketch I made on my panel, it's slightly different from the actual reference I have because there was also a blue glass next to it, but I found it a bit too distracting for my taste, so I decided to keep that out and just focus on a cropped version of the jug and cropped cherries, and I want to have the focus basically on this area of the reflection. It's a bit out of my comfort zone because often composition wise I like to centralize parts and don't cut off things, so this is me stepping out there and just playing around, and I hope you can do the same because you always learn from that. Now let's get started. This sketch is done with a bit pastel pencil, as I normally like to do, and the colors I have on my palette are ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, carmine red, pyrrole red, yellow ochre, I need to add a bit more I see, and also titanium white. Now with these colors I expect that I can mix the colors that I need and which I see. We're not using blacks to make our grays, but we're using these colors combined with white to get to gray as well. Now to start, I first like to just dip my brush in a little bit of water, because this is water soluble oil paint, and I'm just going to add some shadow areas with burnt sienna, just to get the general picture clear for myself. So here we have that jug, and as you see, this sketch is far from perfect and the shapes don't always match, so that's why I like to bring in some bigger blocks of paint. Now this is too wet, I'm just gonna tap it off, make my brush a bit more dry, and instead we'll scumble it on there like this. This is burnt sienna, by the way. I like burnt sienna because it's always very nice and warm as an under color. And later on we will paint all over this with the actual metal colors, of course, but this is just to optimize that sketch a bit. Trying to find those bigger shadow shapes. That's what I'm doing. So like a line. Trying to keep this thin though, because later on I will paint over it, and if you already have a bit thicker paint on your panel, it will be a slip and slide that I'd like to avoid. Also, I see here a line which is still quite dominant and which we will not be keeping in the final piece. I'm just erasing that. It's distracting me. Shadow area over here. Following the shape of the jug. Something like that. Also, we have that shadow shape bit. Again, not going into any details here because we just want to get painting. But this does help me to get an overall feeling of, hey, is that jug a bit in the direction I want it to go to. There. time for some color mixing. Now, the main colors we see, of course, are the metal colors, the cherries, and a nice warm background. I will first focus a bit on those metal colors, and for that I'll make a mixture of burnt sienna with ultramarine blue. You get a near black by combining those two, and depending on adding more burnt sienna or more ultramarine blue, you can play with the warmth of those colors as well. I'm adding some white, and as you see, then you get a gray. In this case we have a bit of a brownish gray. You can play around with that by adding a bit more blue. You get a more bluish gray, or a cooler gray, as you can see. I do need quite some gray, so I will add also a quite light version here. Tidy because I didn't tear off a whole lot of palette paper. So those are my grays to begin with. Later on we'll make it darker, brighter, wherever we need, but this is what I start with. And for the cherries, let's see if we can also make a mixture there. And I would start with the carmine red, adding some blue. Now these are both very transparent colors though. You can see you get a bit of a bluish purple. And now we also make a mixture with pyrrole red and ultramarine blue. A bit more red. And that will be the lighter areas of the cherries. And the cherries are predominantly dark here, huh? But then you do have already a bit of a differentiation in the colors. And for the background, I will take pyrrole red again, but then mix with the yellow ochre. And it looks quite like it. The pyrrole red is also known as Ferrari red. Yellow ochre is, I think it's always on my palette. Let's see, maybe we want it a bit lighter, just see what happens when we add some yellow. Comes a bit pink, it's a fresh color. Just mixing it all together here. Don't want to add too much white. Just a tad more, just to knock it down a bit, make it a bit more bright. And we have this like warm, old pink color, which kind of matches very closely to what we see as well. Time for new tissue. I always keep the tissue in hand to wipe my brush, wipe my palette knife in between. Okay, biggest shapes first. Now, I would say let's start with the shadowy parts of that mug. We have here still a quite dark one. And I'm just scumbling this on lightly. See if we can keep the shadow a bit light, thin I mean, to create an extra illusion of depth. Now we have to improvise a bit here, because on the reference we have there a blue reflection, and in the actual painting we do not. So we'll see how we deal with that later on, but it's good to be aware of that. Now, if we look here, this is also a value, which should be a bit darker than what we see here, so we can tell this is really the lightest part. So I would choose, I think, the cooler one, because cool colors go more to the back side. I'm putting here a cooler gray. And as you can see, we still stay very thin with applying the paint. While we move down here, it might become a bit more warm. So looking at the edge of this jar, because we're still kind of searching for the shapes. We do see that circular movement in the metal, so I'm also trying to achieve that just by moving my brush over and influencing the strokes we see. Taking a bit more warm brown, moving that in those circular motions. Taking a bit of this and a bit of that for the lighter parts. Here we have the lighter part. Keeping in mind that circular motion. See, that's fine to begin with. I do want more darks, so I'm again taking ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And I'm not adding white to it this time. Probably I'll go over this later on with a softer brush, because you see quite some shine on the brushwork there. That's for me. I have this dark spot also here in that shadow reflection. Start adding some more of these lighter tones as well. Just adding some more white when we're at it. Keeping this kind of rough. That also approaches a bit that metal feel. Up there it's a bit more dark, and I'd like to go for that browner version of it. That warmer tone. And at some places you can also just rub out your paint a bit, and then you see the underlayer shine through, and that's also how you can play with the colors. I always like how you can see the light shine through, or see the underlayer shine through when you put it on thinly. This would be roughly the bottom of the jug. Not really satisfied with how this shape is going yet. That's a worry for a bit later. You know that this is too far out. Let's put in some blocks for those cherries as well. Starting with this darker color. Also, putting it on there lightly, as we're still blocking in. Just making very simple shapes that might be cherries. I will have the cherries merge a bit, because we're a little bit out of focus, I guess. Then we have one nice dark block. We also have them on here in the reflection, and they're a bit distorted there, so it's also nice to play around with. And here the shapes touch each other. So I'm just thinking of this as one big mass of interlinked shapes, like one big shape basically. Here and one over there as well. All distorted. Now we have some rough shapes in there, so I can continue on shaping the overall thing. As you can tell, I'm moving all over the place when I'm painting. That's because I cannot say this enough. When you're painting, you're also sculpting a bit. At least, you know, in this style of painting. You're finding your way in how to portray the object or landscape or whatever it is you might want to paint. It's always a search for shapes, no matter what your subject is. It's always searching, adjusting, finding your way. That's what I really like about oil painting. Now here we have a very bright white. Some nice contrast we can put there later on if we darken those cherries even more. Take some of that warmer brown again, or brown gray. And again, we'll keep it a bit loose. Here it's pretty dark. So a shadow. Same there. Here's a very dark part actually. Now let's see what happens if we mix some of that carmine red with burnt sienna, because burnt sienna is also kind of a reddish color. Nice warm brown, not exactly what we're looking for. We need to darken this. This would be a nice color for it on those cherries too. First, get some more of the jug in. And this is an old metal jug, so be free with your brush work on that. Actually, for these darkest parts, I will soon switch over to a smaller brush, so I have some more control. And looking at the overall picture, I'd say we're getting quite close to what we want. As we still have this big brush, we'll also start blocking in some of this background. Trying to redefine the shape again of the jug. So it's all about there. Same height on this side, just to keep it harmonious. On the picture you see it differently, but this is how I like to do it. Maybe we can make a soft transition on the background as well. And instead of having pure white at the bottom, then we have like a very light pink, for example. We'll see. We'll see how it develops. Don't have anything concrete yet. You know, and that's the fun of painting small. You can experiment like that and play around with colors, with shapes, ideas in your head, which you can then always put to use when you paint bigger works, for example. But I do like this color, this pink. Maybe here even what we can do is have it reflect a bit on that jug. And that way we can also create a bit soft edge. See? Making that edge a bit lost. See what happens if we make a very bright version of that pink. So not pure white, just very light pink for that bottom part. I think that will be a nice harmonious approach. Let's have a look at. Yeah, that could work. I'm rubbing this out a bit, so you see that warmth of the underpainting shine through still. Because if we would use a very, very light color here as on the reference, I'm afraid it will drag the attention away from the actual subject, and that's something I want to prevent. There will be also shadow there. out a bit more. I often catch myself that when I mix colors, it's often just a little bit too less. Should mix bigger quantities. Don't be stingy with your paint. Keep telling myself, hey, I'm Dutch. And for Dutch people, stinginess comes natural. We can make a nice blend here. Between fore and background. I'm not happy with this part yet. Let's see what I can do with that in a bit. For now, I will switch to a bit smaller brush. To also lay on colors a bit more thickly, because now I'm just swooping away paint when I go over it. Let's begin on here. And this is really loading my brush with paint, putting it down, reloading, putting it down again. Because otherwise you keep smearing it out instead. Distorting this one a bit more. This one a bit bigger. And that's one we don't see, it's off screen. I feel we need more of such dark mixture. these shapes, and when I put my brush strokes down, I also follow the shape of the subject. And we have a bit more of a reddish brown, so I'm taking this mid color. I think later on I still might add a touch of black for those darkest parts, because it's all too transparent to my liking. See, with this smaller brush, it's easier to put down these darker colors. Without taking away the paint again. This is a softer bristle. Now I'm starting to feel a bit the shapes of the jug getting in there. It's funny, huh, how that all of a sudden can appear just by those small differences. Just to keep it more soft. What I like here is that there's this little reflection of the background also in this shadow part. If you look closely, you see that. I'm also adding a bit of the background color. Just very subtle. Slightly out of focus there because we don't want to focus on it. Just mixing a bit here on the go. This reflection going opposite direction. Let's take the cold gray. Just blending in some whites here. Taking also another softer brush, which is a bit bigger than this one, as you can see, because I want to do a bit of this shadow area here. Now what can we do with that? Maybe take this as a base, but then make it a bit more gray. Like a pinkish gray. Just keep with the overall tone. And I want this to have soft edges because that's also what we see on the reference. These colors almost blend, but they're still distinguishable. And it's really soft, really diffused. And the shadow continues behind that handle. And here we have a soft edge. And I think later if we make it a bit more white, then we can get a very nice effect. Making this softer here. Wiping off some paint so I can blend it a bit easier. Again, here this shadow area I want to have a bit soft, so blending it a bit with the paint what's already up there. Actually, I also see this shadow reflection here, right? Let's just add it there. We can reuse this color several places, I guess. Yeah, here in the bottom. Play a bit with the variety of colors on the jug. Make it a bit less boring, shall we? Just quite randomly. Some more white. As mentioned before, I'm going to get a bit of black. Because with all these opaque colors, it's a bit difficult to get really dark. Nice dark color for those cherries, I'd say. I'm using this this softer brush still to apply it. Actually, I'll blend these a bit together. These cherries to make this front side less distracting. reflection can be a bit more vague. That's also something I need to keep in mind. A bit more reddish. Just applying some direct pure red on some of these. Some carmine. Just to spice things up a tad. A bit more vague. And rugged. Letting the brush play with it. Doesn't need to be a perfect depiction of what I see. I just want to be giving the impression that this could be cherries. Cherries reflected in a metal jug. You need more of those darks, so let's add some black. Not too much. Also some red then. It's a quite cool color. But it would suit well, I guess, on that back side. Okay. Just going over very lightly. Here I'm just using some pure black. This is really the darkest part. A bit of an in-between mixture for you. That's also good for you. And then here again, pure black. So to get some more of that contrast in. I'm taking some more burnt sienna. Where are you? This one is really nearly finished. burnt sienna because I want some warmer gray. Still needs a little lighter. This we can add some more warmth to this. Making this edge a bit softer. See all sorts of reflection damages, fingerprints in such shiny items, so be sure to play around with that. And also dare to let go of your reference picture. Like, that's what I'm doing now. I'm just looking at my painting. And I feel it's too white everywhere, so I just go over it with this color. Need some more white. Because I think we can spruce things up a bit here. You also see some shadow. You also see more shadows here at those cherries. Also here I'm simplifying what I see. And of course we also see shadows up there. Dark part. Simplifying. And actually I think also this part can be darker. And also have this white part still see. Getting a new tissue. The shadows need to be darker as well. These cast shadows. We want to add some yellow, let's just see. Adding some more cooler tones also. Now I'm blending some titanium white in the already resin paint to line up that edge. I think here we're going to do the same. Just to accentuate the shapes. Little bit. So I do like the effect it gives, to be honest. This full last edge there, I like that. So on top here, let's see. We can finalize this jug a bit. Also have some I think this white should continue a bit further. It's a bit softer again. Here it is. It should be less thick. Time for some highlights. back a bit. Not really pleased with this part yet. We lost it. Oh, I like that. Here, I think it needs to be a tad darker, just a tad. And a bit softer. Here also these edges need to be soft. And we can have this color reflect off there. And then some of this color down there as well. Try to add a bit more of the shadows under those cherry reflections. Now these cherries also have sticks, or twigs, or whatever you might call it. A bit of a muted green for those. This one is a very long one. There's also one. Actually, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna remove some paint to make it easier to draw it in. This is a pretty dark one, so there I'm not gonna remove it. I'm gonna take my smaller brush again. green on the top, playing around a bit with it. Trying to make it a little bit darker. And then finally, what remains is putting on some highlights on those cherries. And I always think you see a bit of a soft highlight first, and then in the middle of that you see a hard white. First I'm making the soft highlights. Those are the softs. Now I'm going for the hards. This is a very dominant one. Just laying on the paint. Too strong, so spreading it out a little bit more. Because I don't want to over dominate the glow there, of course. can we make that shine more? Just by adding some color. And lightening this background a bit to create a bit of a glow effect. There we go. This is how far I will be taking this painting. Thanks for watching. All that is left to do is to sign it. And as usual, I like to scratch out in the paint. I'll do that over here between the cherries. And thanks for watching.